Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Thursday. We're looking at Psalm 23 this week, and when we come to verse 4, the psalmist writes, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." The psalmist reminds us here that the shepherd does not just lead us to lush green pastures or those calm, still waters. He leads us even when we go through dangerous times. The valley of the shadow of death is not just a shadow, all right? Some will admit they're afraid of their own shadow, or maybe afraid of a shadow in a dark alley in the middle of the night somewhere. But while the shepherd led his sheep to green pastures, sometimes those pastures dried up. And he would lead them to other pastures which called for them to go through some rocky areas. Maybe some concealed pastures would be through the mountains. And it was through those rocky mountain passes that there was a lot of rough terrain. Not only dangerous for the sheep, but those rock formations may jut out over the path, which of course would allow a great opportunity for some wild animal, some predator of the sheep to hide there and perhaps even prepare to pounce on some defenseless sheep as they traveled through that area. It is perhaps in this area that David killed the bear and the lion he later tells King Saul about. So we're reminded that our shepherd does lead us. He does take us to those green pastures. But sometimes he leads us even through the darkest days of our lives. You know, the translation of this passage actually is through the blackest darkness of night, that which brings perils or even death. And yet the writer says, "I will fear no evil, for you are with me." You know, the sheep put their trust in this shepherd because they knew that they could face anything, even the toughest of circumstances, as long as the shepherd was right there to protect them and to guide them. Christ has promised us in Hebrews 13:5, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." So when we recognize that and know his presence, it should bring great comfort to us. The writer goes on to say, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." Now, this is not meant to be the rod of affliction or not something you use in chastisement. Actually, the shepherd would use his rod oftentimes to count the sheep. As they passed under the rod, he would recognize them. Passages in the Old Testament talk about passing under the rod as an acknowledgement that they belong to the shepherd. Wow. These sheep could take such comfort in knowing that as they saw that rod go by, that meant, I'm one of his. I'm one of the sheepfold, and I am accounted in this number. And the staff was an emblem of support for the weak. It would raise up the fallen. It would give aid to those who were the weakest in the flock. It was also used as a reminder of God's power. The Bible says that David took his staff into the battle with Goliath. Or Moses, of course, had a staff that he used oftentimes to show the power of God, raising it over the Red Sea and parting the waters as God moved among them. We see God's strength in this. And I hope that we are near enough to the shepherd that we know the rod and the staff that comfort us. Because the shepherd can even lead us through the darkest of valleys, even perhaps the valley of the shadow of death. But we will fear no evil.